Okay, no. So basically, let's just put this in italics if this is wrong. Okay. Um, it has to be more coherent. Okay. Okay. So basically, first of all, what we're gonna do is we're gonna divide psychological and we're gonna divide methodological. Okay. So everything under this would be a specific name, like for example, doctors clothing would be psychological because it has something to do with psyche. That's something that your psyche is being affected by, your behavior or your feelings are being affected by. So all of that is going to come under psychological. So anything cognitive, anything biological, all of that is under psychological. Coming to just a sec. Okay, wait, give me a second. I was just checking something. Where is, oh shit. Okay. Right, yeah. So a specific aim, so clothing, the clothing in this sense, anything biological, something specific, so anything cognitive, any cognitive aim, any biological aim, all of this is going to come under psychological. Other than this, your issues and debates, those will come under psychological, and your ethics will come under psychological. When you talk about method, your experimental method, your conditions, experimental conditions, your sample, your procedure, all of this will come under methodological. Why? Because it is talking about the method, and when you talk about psychological, that's talking about your psyche, right? So when you look at the design study that you wrote, right, so you can say that, so you're gonna be like, I will be conducting, you were conducting interviews, right? What were you conducting, a questionnaire?
Questionnaire, yeah.
Okay, yes, I will be gathering data via a questionnaire that will consist of open-ended questions, ultimately resulting in a detailed analysis of my hypothesis or aim. And then you can say, just as it was done by McKinsey. If they, did they take questionnaires? Right. So basically, they're asking you, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So basically, they're asking you to explain the psychological and methodological evidence. Okay, evidence on which your study is based. So you are saying you will go back to your study. You're gonna be like, okay, this part here, where I'm taking a questionnaire. So this part here is basically a part of my method. Give me a second. Sorry, yeah. So this particular part here where you're saying that you will be taking a questionnaire in order to collect your data, so this is basically the evidence which your study is based on. Now this is basically your method. Okay, so you're like, okay, this is my method, but where did I get this from? Like what evidence is there that I got this from somewhere? So you're going to be like that, a, this is my methodological way, and b, the evidence I got it from, where I got it from was basically McKinstry and Wang. So let's say you said that I will be gathering data via questionnaire. You will also provide a strength of it, right? So you are basically conducting a research based on this particular methodological thing that you have chosen. But why would you do that? Because it is strengthful in some way, right? It's strengthening your whole research, your whole study. That's why you will mention that. So you will be like, I will be gathering data via a questionnaire that will consist of open-ended questions, ultimately resulting in a detailed analysis of my hypothesis and aim. And then this is basically your strength, why you're basically choosing this particular way, just as it was done by McKinstry and Wang in the research regarding. So now you're basically explaining their research and what they found out. Is it a little clearer how to develop a pointer for this?
Yes.
So you can give maximum 2 pointers for psychological and 2 for methodological, and you will get your 8 on 8. If you do not get a lot of pointers on psychological, because that happens, not every study is very psychologically centered or focally psychological, which is why you can say 3 methodological and 1 psychological. Over here, a psychological evidence would be that you'll be like, the okay, you can say the study aims to find out the preference and changing behaviors amongst patients who attend consultants, doctors, and what are clothing for dressing plays in it. This was researched by McKinsey etc. Now that's your psychological evidence, because it doesn't have anything to do with your method. It has something to do with the specific thing that you're psychologically focusing towards. And other than this, let's say you are talking about the aim of the study is this, and then you're talking about that you have 2 conditions. So you're going to be like that I'm using 2 conditions. Again, also it doesn't have to be just McKinsey and Rank. Okay, so what other studies what other studies are there in nonverbal communication? Tell me that.
The other studies?
Yeah, like what other studies are there in non-verbal communication, under
Oh,
non-verbal communication?
there's Byron and Long. There's
Yeah, okay.
Savage and Armstrong, but they're more directly sharing style. So that still counts, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's verbal. That's going to come under verbal. um just a second, give me a second. Where's my dog? There are a pile of books here. Just give me a second, I'll be RB. Right, yeah, I'm back. So we
No,
have,
it's McKinstry and Wang, not Byron and Long. I got the names mixed up.
yeah, okay, so we have
Byron and
cognitive.
Long was patient and doctor centered.
Right, yes. So, okay, other than that, all of them fall under. So there's McKinley, which also falls under verbal communication. And then there is
Yeah,
Lee,
there's
which is,
only McKinstry and Wang is
yeah, yeah.
non-verbal. I think everyone else follows under verbal.
There's this another evidence that I remember. It was a study by Shorad. He basically was he talks about how touch would be a non-verbal communication, but now that's not a part of your syllabus, even though a lot of people use that in order to, give evidence. Okay, that's okay. However, okay, so this actually makes your answer very easy. Let's say, for example, this question was about um, patient and practitioner diagnosis, right? So let's say, example, if it was about patient and practitioner diagnosis, and they were talking about communication of doctors. So let's say you had to design a study whether patients are affected by the way their doctor communicate information. And let's say you take the design, so you have designed a study and you took the design of Ryan and Long, and you took the 2500 consultations and stuff like that. So tape recorded. Right, so let's say this is your study. However, now the thing is, you do not, even if you've based your study on this particular method, what you can do is, because there are other studies that come under this, so let's say, for example, you're talking about Savage and Armstrong, right? So you can also choose something from there. So for example, in your study you have taken everything related to Van and Long, and you've said that you will take 2500 tape recorded consultations and able, but then you can also say that you will not just check them on the basis of doctor centered and patient centered, but you will also check them on the basis of sharing or directing styles. Okay, so and then you will, when you're writing your 8 marker, you will say that you got this particular idea from Savage and Armstrong. So it doesn't have to revolve around only one study. Okay, it can revolve around more than one study in that particular group. Even when you, let's say, for example, you're talking about another topic than patient and practitioner, let's say you're talking about stress, because that is also likely to come, right? So they are saying, well, for example, they ask you to study what is the cause of stress in a workplace. Okay, and you obviously will revolve your study around Shandola's work study, and you will talk more about how she wanted to see the risks of CHD and how she conducted a longitudinal study which was called the Whitehall 2 study. However, what you can do is, you can also be like that, I will be using a questionnaire, and when you're writing your 8 marker, you can say that you got the idea of a questionnaire from life events by what was Friedman and Rosenman? No, that was personality. So whoever that was. So you, or even first, you can say that you will be checking the personality types, and you got that particular idea, that psychological idea from Friedman and Rosenman, because they studied personality through this. Am I making a little bit of sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're writing your study, when you're designing a study, it doesn't have to revolve around just one study. It has to revolve around one topic. So even if you're asked to talk about this particular design question that I've written here, whether they are affected by the way doctors communicate with them. So this can include medical jargon, this can include directing versus sharing styles, this can include the 2500 consultations that Bayern and Long, and you can conduct a study based on all three studies that you have studied. So it doesn't have to just be that one study. You can take ideas from all three studies. And what will happen in 8 marker is that when you look for your psychological and methodological ways, you will have more things to compare to different studies, not just one study. But it's like, for example, then there can also be questions such as this one that we had. So this only has McKinstry and Wang under it, so you can't really have more evidence. You just have McKinstry and Wang, which is okay too. So are we clear on this?
Yes, miss.
Okay, great. So let me just look for a religion answer and a 35 marker, and we can see to that. We need sociology, sociology past papers. Right. We've got a 35 marker here which says religion has become less important in people's lives. Um, just a second. I'm just looking for the other answer or the other question that's about patriarchy. Okay. Right. So you again you have your statement, you have to go for it and then you have to go against it. And while you're doing that, you're basically evaluating it. So you're not just going for and against in the sense that I agree with this, you're also explaining why you agree with this and why you wouldn't agree with it. So your first thing is that you write an introductory. So you write an introductory para or short para actually. So 3 lines maximum, and you'll talk about what religion is and its variation. General introductory, like you have one in an essay. So this is basically an essay question. Like that's why you need an introductory. Then you will talk about four. You will give 4 pointers. So for example, you can say that religion has become less important in people's lives. So you can maybe talk about secularization. Okay. Um, and now when you talk about let's say secularization and so this would not just be like this is your point basically, right? So you will move ahead and then you will talk about, so this part is basically you explaining what religion is less important due to secularization, which is etc etc. You explain what secularization is. So you basically explain what secularization. Yes, okay. Then you go ahead and you give an explanation as to that there are secular states now, that there is westernization. You will give basically linking views as to how, what do you mean by this, right? So what do you, why do you think that religion is less important due to secularization? What has secularization done? So you will say that it has brought about westernization in Islamic countries or whatever you want to talk about. That's your explanation as to how secularization has affected the importance of religion. Then you give an evidence. So here you will obviously mark your sociologist, and then you go ahead and you give an analysis, which is basically a link that because secular states now focus on Western ideas, etc., etc., it has led to a, an eradication of religious values. That's 1 point. Okay. Um, let's go ahead and let's talk about, let's say, um, we can talk about consumerism. We can also talk about science. We can talk about privatization. We can talk about, uh, again, when we say social and cultural significance, that would be that would come under secularization only. And we can talk about downfall. Another pointer would be downfall of religious institutes due to, could be globalization. So it could be globalization or materialism. That's another point to say. Similarly, if you this is your point, then you will explain it. You will give evidence. Then you can talk about you can talk about science with growth. You can talk about what was another point that I gave? I gave consumerism, right? Consumerism, and you can talk about privatization. That education is a now revenue revenue benefit, and how that has led to private schools over public or religious free. So again, look, when you talk about the most important points here, do still stay secularization, they still stay westernization and consumerism. Okay. Other than that, oh, sorry, not even consumerism, modernism. Okay, that there is a modern society which wants modern views rather than having religious views and having represent religious ideas. Okay, and you can also bring in a political view in this, that how in European countries now it's like the Church of England now has a weaker position. Usually it had a higher position, it worked with the monarch. Okay, so the Queen used to work with the Church of England. Now that still happens, but it happens on a very it's like on a very charitable basis, that okay, you are giving charity to the church, but there is no stronghold of the church anymore. It is all happening via political base. Okay, where people are following the views that they think are coming from the church, whereas that is not true at all. So so a political point of view would also come here. And then when you go, so this is your four point of view, and then when you go against it, so you have to be like that, there have been, so you'll be like no, so you'll be like that there have been religious movements. And then you can talk about how um, obviously there's been a growth in religious movements, and then you can say that there is revival in Western societies such as Germany. Okay, you can talk about you have to be a little, so you can do four at three, so but then you can talk about how okay, so this actually comes with this only. Even when you talk about like some republics are based on their certain religion, such as Islamic Republic. Then we can also talk about spirituality. Yes.
Honest, I think I have an against point.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So against would wait, no, yeah, so against would mean that religion has become is important in people's lives, right?
Yeah,
So I have a point. It's more based on the ethnicity part of religion. I
totally.
came across this, it's called the existential security theory.
Yeah.
So it means like um, the feeling that survival is secure enough and that it can be taken for granted.
Hmm.
So it's seen mainly in lower class areas as wait, I have the point here. Yeah, punishments are given to non-believers, so the fear of the
Yeah, yeah.
afterlife is a coping strategy.
Totally, I get what you mean. You're right. Okay, and another thing that came from this only is fatalistic behaviors. So it's like people who are fatalistic do believe that fate handles all. When you talk about spirituality, so there's newfound ways. So that means that there's newer ways, but religion is still important. So okay, so then you have to evaluate each of these pointers on the basis that you on these bases that I had provided over here, that you have to have a point, an explanation as to what your point means, your evidence for that point, an analysis link that how your explanation leads to that point. Okay, so how this certain thing leads to what the question is asking. So what you have to do is you have to give one part of the one part more than the other, right? So it's like a discursive essay. So sorry, an argumentative sort of. So it's like if you're giving four for this, so you can give three for this. Okay, and then you basically give your conclusion, which has to pick a side. Okay, however, what your issue is that that you don't have a lot of content coming to you for a single point. So first thing is that first tip would be write content in PEA format for whichever point you can. If a point feels insufficient, give reference for an example. Now, for example, if I talk about this particular point of republic, so if I don't have an evidence of this, I can just give an example that the example is this particular republic. Okay, or if I don't have a evidence for spirituality, if I don't have a sociological, if I don't have a sociologist or a researcher talking about spirituality, you can just give an example that this is a newfound way of spirituality that I came across. Okay, it can be a real life example as well. If the point, so you give a, and then the third thing is if you feel that the pointers are not developed efficiently, if you feel like one content like this pointer, let's say you're talking about this ethnicity pointer, I feel like this would be a long pointer which you can evaluate. But let's say if you talk about a fatalistic behaviors pointer, so this might be a very summarized pointer. You can't follow the PEA format in this, and then you'd be like, okay, what do? I don't even, I can't follow the format. What do I explain in this? I can't go beyond 5 lines for this pointer. So that's okay, give another pointer. Okay, even out your content. So it's okay if you can't, if you feel like one pointer is insufficient, it lacks detail and you cannot provide any more detail, you give another pointer instead of it. And not instead of it, you keep that over there only, you just give another pointer that supports your stance basically. Because the main idea is not about the pointers, the main idea is that your stance at the end of it is supported. It doesn't feel like that you focused on one part more and the other part less. Okay, it has to be evened out. So right, again, and then your conclusion where you're talking about, when you're picking a side, you can also give out pointers here. So for this would be for or again. So you can also just, by the end of it, if you feel like that you missed out one pointer which was like important and can, give your answer a strong hold, give it in the conclusion. Be like, if for example you're saying that religion does still hold an importance in people's life and you have a very valid pointer for it, and so you can be like, for example, or such as we've seen, such as anything. Okay, does it make a little bit of sense now?
Yes.
And one thing, always remember, topics such as religion are the ones that can use a lot of real life examples. So something that might not have been a part of your syllabus, like for example, I remember that, I don't know, it was my mocks or midterms, but then I used the example of how taking a scarf is banned in France, and that, that was also marked correctly, because as long as it shows the significance of your point, even if it's a pointer that is coming from recent times or your own personal research, it is still valid. Okay.
Yes. However, there is like a small issue. It's
Okay,
not
go ahead.
really to do with Cambridge, it's more to do with the UAE government.
Okay,
So
what is
what's
it?
happened is that as ridiculous as it is, they've announced through like a school government system here that's called the KHDA, they've sort of announced that all like religion-based studies are banned, basically. So we're not allowed to call like this subsection of social, we call it religion. But they've already put this legislation through that they have to call it belief systems instead. So
Okay.
there might be, I'm not really sure if it still applies to like me doing the exam because I know it applies to next year students, but there's a chance that I have to censor most of what I write in this paper.
Maybe, but I also feel like, because these papers will be checked by the Cambridge, right? And they, let's say for example, if you are giving your, what is it called, like the local papers, or something they call something else over here, but you guys could probably call them something else. So if those, I feel like if those were going through the if those were going through, those would be an issue with the, let's say, the government. Okay, but as far as I think this being checked by Cambridge, I don't feel like you'll have to censor it that much. Whatever, especially factual information. So if you feel like that, it would be a problem, let's not use real life information. But whatever is in your book, quote it. Okay, use speech marks. That's okay. So you're basically
Yeah.
citing it then. Yeah. So if you have a particular study that you're, or a sociological reference, and if you're naming the sociologist as well, then go ahead and also quote whatever he found out, or whatever his, for example, this existential theory that you were talking about, maybe put this in quotations. That's going to keep you safe. But other than that, if you feel like that an example from the real life, or an applicable example would, not be sufficient in this whole scenario that's going on, that's fine too. As long as you write factual information, it's okay.
Yeah, I hope, because I don't think it really applies to us, but they are taking it seriously for next year. Like our head of examination is going to email Cambridge and like announce that this is a government thing, we're not allowed, and they're going to remove the topic in itself. So from next year onwards, there will be no religion. It will just be globalization and media,
Makes sense. But
which
I feel
is,
like if it's next year onwards, then you're safe. Just write whatever you
yeah,
want to go give a good exam.
yeah. I'll just make sure to, I'll just ask my teacher just in case. I mean, it shouldn't be much of a problem, but just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. Make just always be on the safe side. It's totally fine. Okay. Do you want me to give you another religion question that you can attempt at home?
Yes, miss. And then I can send it to you on WhatsApp or just let you know that I've written it on the Google Doc. Either one works.
Totally, totally. So I'm just copy pasting it on the Google Doc only. Um, there you go. So this is also a 35 marker. You can complete this. So you've got psychology tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I've got it in the morning. And then I've got socio on the 23rd, which is PM.
Makes sense. Okay. So just ask me any questions you have regarding psychology today. If you have absolutely any, that's okay. Or if you want me to check anything, just give me that as well. And um, even sociology, if you feel like that you need to discuss anything or whatever, we can take a class tomorrow as well. That's fine. Just let me know, okay?
Okay, miss. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz. Bye bye.